This is Sean Stevenson from the SeanStevensonModel.com, and you're listening to Justin and Kate at Extreme Health Radio, bringing cutting-edge fitness and nutrition information right into your eardrums. So buckle your seatbelts and listen in.
Welcome to Extreme Health Radio. Extreme Health Radio.
Where natural solutions to almost every health condition are out there. Join us on our journey to find them.
Now here are your hosts,
broadcasting from sunny Southern California around the world,
Justin and Kate Stellman.
Oh my gosh, I forgot it was going to make that noise, that little thing there.
I heard a gong.
Did you hear that?
What was that? What was that?
Oh my gosh. I have this little thing that I have that it tells me, still laughing about it because it made it on the air, but it tells me I have it set for every 20 minutes, and it's a countdown timer. So it tells me at the end of 20 minutes to raise my standing desk.
Oh, so you're not sitting for too long.
Yeah, because I'm trying to time myself. Because I've heard you don't want to sit for longer than 6 hours in a day.
Right.
And no longer than 20 minutes each time. So I have this little gong. So if you guys hear a gong,
go off.
Go off.
It sounded like I was in some sort of like temple.
Yeah, we're in the middle of a...
That was great. I love it.
Oh my gosh. All right, with that out of the way, I want to thank you guys all for joining us. This is Justin from Extreme Health Radio, and that voice you heard was...
Kate, your sidekick.
My sidekick?
Some days.
/wife.
/wife, /note taker.
/note taker.
/food preparer.
It's the Slashy Awards.
Slashy Awards.
And this is Extreme Health Radio. This is episode... What episode is this?
153.
153, and we are... And let's see, Wednesday, September 25th, 2013.
I know, crazy, right?
Crazy. Time is flying by. And if you'd like to follow us on Facebook, please feel free to do so. Join our community. We'd love to have you do that. It'd be an amazing thing to have you a part of that and stay up to date with our shows and different information we post and all of that. And if you'd like to support us on Amazon this holiday season or anytime you make a purchase on Amazon, we'd love to have you support us. It'd be great. And you can just go to extremehealthradio.com/Amazon, and you can just make your purchases. Doesn't have to be health related, and there you go.
You could buy a gong.
You could buy a gong.
It's true. You could buy anything you want.
That would be pretty cool.
That would be cool. I like the sound of it.
That's funny. So today we've got a really great guest. Again, this is, I think, the fourth installment of our 4-part series with Mr. Daniel Vitalis. And he is an amazing guy, and he's got a website called SirThrival.com if you haven't heard, and his own website where he kind of blogs and does his writings is DanielVitalis.com, and he goes around the world and does lectures and teaches people, and just an amazing guy. And today we're going to be talking about the fourth noble element, which is fire. So welcome, Daniel. Thanks for joining us today. How you doing?
Yeah, it's good to be back. So it's like the alpha and omega. We've kind of come through this process doing these interviews, and we've come to the sort of final part. And really excited to share information about the element of fire today.
I love it. And speaking of fire, are you going to be making your yearly pilgrimage this coming up winter to Arizona?
You know, I'm in decision mode about that right now. I was just getting cleaned up and showered and ready for this interview, and I was thinking about the hot springs there that I visit, and thinking, yeah, it's time to book some tickets.
Yeah, the water's getting a little cold, so you're thinking,
it's getting a little chilly up this way already. A little dark, too.
Is that right?
And actually a really timely part for the conversation, because, you know, I call this element fire, but, you know, when it comes to our health, what I'm really talking about is the fire of the sun, or the light of the sun. And, you know, we are headed, this is a timely conversation because we're headed in the northern hemisphere into winter, and it's time for us to really start thinking about our light exposure and our sun exposure and our vitamin D levels and all these things, because they're so much more important than we often think about. And so for those of us who have the, I guess the luxury, but really who've created the opportunity to go away for the winter, or for people like you guys who live in a place that's just sort of perpetually sunny, we're really blessed because we're able to, you know, maintain those vitamin D levels throughout the winter. For a lot of people, they're headed into a deep deficiency. and that manifests itself in a lot of different ways. And one of those ways, of course, they call being really sad, or they call seasonal affective disorder,
that's right.
which is, a truly a deficiency of a critical nutrient, but in this case, that nutrient is a form of energy called ultraviolet light.
How prevalent do you think it is, that seasonal affectiveness disorder? Is it pretty prevalent?
I think it's extremely prevalent, but the numbers are a little wishy-washy, and we're still getting clear on how prevalent vitamin D deficiency is. But I think that we could say that, my guess would be if we really got down to blood tests of everybody in our population, we'd see it be, 90%, I bet, would have vitamin D deficiencies. But it's high. It's more than half.
Well, because I take for granted that we live down here in Southern California, but because I'm just thinking of Seattle and the fact that they have the highest suicide rate and all of that, right?
It's interesting with them, too, because if you look at the UV exposure maps for the country, there's a really strong correlation between breast cancer and sunlight as well. And we see that the places like where I live in Maine, a much higher rate than where you are in Southern California. Mm-hmm. And we see that band of UV light, or that light, I guess, deficiency tips up into the Seattle area, where there's also a really high prevalence of breast cancer. And it seems to, in part, be related to deficiencies of enough UVB to produce the vitamin D people need.
Wow, that's interesting. So,
if you lived anywhere but here, Jay, you'd be toast.
I would be.
You're affected. There's one cloudy day out of like a month, and he goes into this like downward spiral. I'm not kidding. It's bad.
It's not good.
It's not good.
Yeah, it's so interesting how that is. Do you think that's just a vitamin D deficiency thing that I've got going on, even though I live here? Or
well, there's more to it. We're going to get more deeply into it, of course, as the call goes on. But there are crucial neurotransmitters whose production is dependent upon your exposure to sunlight, and namely serotonin and a more advanced form of melatonin. They're sort of precursor. Serotonin's a precursor of melatonin, but both of those neurotransmitters, their production and regulation is dependent on our exposure to sunlight. And serotonin, I think most of us have heard by now, is truly critical to good mood, and melatonin critical to good quality sleep and rest. And when we're not getting enough sunlight, the production of those things is affected, and so our moods are affected. So it is vitamin D, but it's also other things as well. And my guess is, we'll stick to the science today, and maybe we'll touch on a little mysticism, but we'll mostly stick to the facts of science, right? That science is established right now. Mm-hmm. But I think one of the things we all can see when we look at the world of science is that constantly new things are being discovered, and almost always they're validating old beliefs. Mm-hmm. And so I think part of it is serotonin, part of it's vitamin D, and then a lot of it probably goes into even more spiritual territory. And those things, like I said, I think energetically, those things will be validated as science moves forward.
So serotonin, you said, is a precursor to melatonin. Is that right?
Yeah, they're crucial for, serotonin's crucial for the production of melatonin. And we, our bodies, and, these two molecules, they regulate what we call our circadian rhythm. And so that's sort of our diurnal sleep-wake cycle. Uh-huh. And it is regulated by sunlight. And so, really what I guess, to really introduce today's interview, what I want to say is that we are, according to the current, numbers given to us, by, again, they're sort of the men in the white coats, the scientists. They tell us that our species is 200,000 years old in its modern form. But of course, our hominid lineage goes back millions of years. And all of those years, up until, can you imagine this? Really up until just recently, maybe 100 years ago, that entire history was lived in the presence of sunlight. It was lived out in the sunlight. Never before has this happened where people have been this cut off. Now, about 6,000 years ago, we really got into this thing called, civilization or city building. Mm-hmm. And of course, cities are like an artificial canyon, right? So if you live in a city, a walled city or a city with large, buildings, it's sort of like being in a canyon. And of course, people start getting cut off from sunlight. Mm-hmm. And that's a new phenomena. But still, very few people relative to the Earth's population did that until very very recently. Now we've just crossed the threshold where more people live in cities than live in the country. And this is unprecedented, right? This is bold new territory. And so for the first time, we're seeing most of the population living in these artificial canyons cut off from sufficient sunlight. So it's sort of something it's been a domino effect, but it's been more of I guess it's been a parabolic curve. People are it's been accelerated how deficient people are in, receiving the UV that they need. So but the point is, as an animal, we've lived our entire existence in the presence of sun. And I think if we were going to say, if we were going to really get down to it, what is so unique and different about Homo sapiens? Why are we different? I mean, there's lots of people who've given lots of sort of explanations, like we're different because we are conscious of ourselves, or we're different because we have opposable thumbs, or we're different because we are tool makers. But in my opinion, what really differentiates and separates our type of, monkey, I guess you could say, our type of primate, our species from every other animal on the planet, is that we've harnessed fire. That is truly the unique thing. I mean, we see that some of our primate and our relatives do make rudimentary tools. That's not unique to us. Tool use is not unique to human beings, but fire use.
Interesting. Okay.
That's unique. And we've been doing that for, it looks like we've been making fire since before we were in our modern form, which means before Homo sapiens, picture ourselves, and then there was a creature before us, similar to us, but much more of a proto form. Homo habilis looks like he made fire. So it looks like there was never a time where human beings learned to make fire. We actually have been making fire since we first existed, and that's important to understand. Wow. We've been cooking and we've been producing tools with fire since the very first human being. So the first human being already knew how to make fire, if that makes sense. There was never a sort of discovery of fire for our species, because the species before us had discovered it.
That's crazy, because I've heard that book too. They talk about, I've never read it. It's something about how cooking made us human, and the fact that we ate cooked food has something to do with our brains enlarging and all of that. Have you heard about that book?
Yeah, that book, Catching Fire, is really important, I think, for people who are interested in this idea to read, because really what it explores is how archaeologists digging back through time, through layers of strata of the earth, they find these hearths where our ancestors were producing fire. And the further they go back, expecting to sort of, I guess, you can imagine originally expecting to sort of figure out when we discovered fire. Mm-hmm. But then instead what they find out is, hey, wait a second, we didn't discover fire. Another species discovered fire and passed that technology to us.
Really?
And that's a very powerful shift in thinking.
So what does that mean?
You could imagine a sort of Garden of Eden scenario where human beings just sort of live like all the other animals, but that actually never we've been a sort of slightly unnatural organism since the very beginning, inception of our species.
So how did that work? Some other species existed and then taught us how to use fire? Is that kind of how...
Well, or it'd be probably more appropriate to say another species knew how to use fire, and over time that species became us.
Wow.
If that makes more sense. And we would recognize, if we were to go back 200,000 years, and we were to take a human from that time, the earliest humans, and we were to put modern clothes on them and walk them down the streets where you live, you would not notice them as different. They are anatomically the same as you. You'd think, wow, that guy's a badass, or wow, that woman's gorgeous, because they would have a physique that would be far more robust than ours as far as their musculature. I'm sure that their teeth would look a lot nicer. Their skulls would be formed very well. So they would look like really healthy people, but they would be the same body as us. But if we were to take a Homo habilis, now you would be like, whoa, ape man, that's not a human, that's something else. Yeah. What is that? And those are the ones who eventually became us, essentially.
It's like the Geico commercial kind of guy.
Yeah, exactly. So easy a caveman can do it. And, interestingly, if you go out into the woods and try to make fire without matches or a lighter, you'll see, wow, it's not that so easy a caveman could do it. Actually very complex and requires some understanding of physics. And so I think one point I want to make here is that what is fire? We talked in the last installment where we talked about air, we talked about fire being oxidation, and we talked a lot about the blood and sort of rusting and burning and oxidation. And today what I want to say about fire is that in addition to oxidation, you could almost think of fire as being stored sunlight. So let's imagine a plant like a tree. What it's doing is it's photosynthesizing. So it's taking sunlight and it's building these complex sugars called cellulose. Another name for cellulose is wood. Uh-huh. So a plant is basically building wood out of what's in the soil, what's in the air, and combining that with the energy of sunlight. And what it's doing is storing the sunlight in its sugars or in its wood. When we burn that wood, we're basically releasing the heat and the light that's been stored in there from sunlight, if that makes sense.
Wow. So
fire is essentially stored sunlight. When we burn anything, we're basically releasing that sunlight energy back. So, this whole thing, the whole planet is basically fueled by sunlight. And our whole evolutionary history has taken place in the presence of sunlight. And when we think about the sun, I guess it's easy to forget almost for a minute that what the sun is. Like, it's a star. And we live, and here's maybe a new way of thinking about the star that we often think we live next to. But something I'd like to sort of drop into the minds of the listener here is that I think it's really more appropriate to say we live inside of the sun. And the reason is the sun is made up of various layers, starting at its core and spreading out. We see its photosphere and then eventually what we call the heliosphere. Uh-huh. And the heliosphere is a gigantic electromagnetic field that emanates from the sun. In our entire solar system, the Earth included, is actually inside the heliosphere. So essentially, we live inside of a layer of the sun, its most diffuse layer.
Wow.
We actually are inside the sun, if that makes sense. So it's a very diffuse layer. It's a very energetic layer made up of electromagnetically charged particles. And our planet is literally embedded in that. So for our entire existence, we've been receiving that light directly onto our bodies, and we've been producing chemicals as a result. Essentially, it's like a required nutrient, this light from the sun. And we produce chemicals that when we're not in the sunlight, we don't produce, and our health begins to degrade really rapidly. So as I've mentioned in the past, but I'll reiterate here, we have more nutritional needs than just food. Food is where we get some of our nutrients, but we also get, a critical nutrient, H2O hydration from drinking water. We also get critical nutrients like oxygen from breathing air. And there are critical nutrients in the electromagnetic spectrum that emanates from the sun, primarily ultraviolet B radiation, which we require. We can't live without ultraviolet radiation. We need it. Right. And there's been a movement towards blocking ourselves from the sun, covering ourselves from the sun, putting on chemicals that absorb that UVB so that it doesn't get into our skin. And there's like a phobia that's spread around the world that the sun is dangerous for us. And I think it just shows the lack of common sense, because it's like, hey, if we step back and just think about this for a second, 200,000 years in sunlight, what changed with the sun that all of a sudden it was bad for us?
Right.
Because we don't have a long history of skin cancer. That's a relatively new phenomena in its current form. So,
well, wouldn't the doctors say that what changed would be the alleged fact that we're destroying our ozone layers and all that?
That doesn't really hold water for very long. I mean, really, the ozone layer issue really only is in part of the planet, and that's actually not where we're seeing the increase in cancers. Mostly where we're seeing skin cancer is in places where people get the least sunlight. So that's a really important distinction here.
I think the average person buys into that theory, though.
Yeah,
because nobody really pays attention to what's really going on.
Yeah.
And the thing is it's not completely false, right? It's based in some fact. So here's the thing about sunlight. Sunlight has some incredibly beneficial effects, and it does have some deleterious effects. There are some negative effects to sunlight. I mean, there's no question that sunlight ages the skin, right? We can see that in people who've had excessive sun exposure their whole life. Right. We can see that it wrinkles the skin, it damages the skin. There's no question that unprotected skin can develop skin cancers. Now, there's an interesting thing here. The World Health Organization did a study. It's called the Global Burden of Disease Due to Ultraviolet Radiation. Wow. And in that, what they explored was how serious is this issue worldwide of cancers and other health conditions that are created by ultraviolet radiation. And what they found was, and these numbers are based on, they modulate these numbers by introducing the idea that some people, maybe it's not just death, but it's also disability. So we're looking at the problems of death, but also disease too, combined. So those are called disability adjusted life years. And what they found is that only 0.1% of the world's disease burden is a result of ultraviolet light. So
really,
what they uncovered was that a statistically almost non-existent problem with, death and disease due to ultraviolet light. And what this reveals is that actually what we need to look at is how serious are the effects of not getting sunlight. And when we look at that, what we see is like a tremendous increase in...
I'm so sorry about that, Daniel. That was my little program. I couldn't
stand up.
Oh my gosh, time to stand up.
I'll turn that off for the rest. I'm so sorry.
Little metronome in the background. All right, so I guess really the thing is that what they found was that when we don't get enough UV, actually the disease burden for the world goes up much more. So we see problems with breast cancer. We see problems with lung cancer. We see problems with colon cancer. We see problems with prostate cancer that arise when we don't get enough UV. So really what I think the world's realizing now is that it's actually more important that people get sunlight than that they try to constantly protect themselves from sunlight, because the negative effects of not getting sunlight far outweigh any negative effects caused by excessive UV, if that makes sense. Yeah. It's a much bigger problem not to get sunlight. And worldwide, that lack of sunlight that people are receiving is causing a huge disease burden for the planet right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we got to take a break right now, but I see people around our town all the time. I mean, when we go walking, Kate, we'll see ladies all completely covered up, and they'll have gloves, umbrellas, and it's just amazing. Yeah,
it's seriously.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Strangest thing. Why would you be in Southern California if you're going to walk around with a parasol?
Yeah, it's really wild. And I also heard of a study they were doing in Australia, and I think it was something to the effect of, I forget what the actual numbers were, but the overall point of the study was that the people that had the highest incidence of skin cancer were people that, like office workers, who had less than, I think, 5 hours of sun exposure a week or something like that. And so all of that supports everything you're saying, Daniel.
Yeah, and we'll flesh that out a little bit more after your break.
Excellent. All right, we're with Daniel Vitalis, and I hope you're enjoying the interview. And we're going to be right back with Daniel Vitalis from danielvitalis.com and sirthrival.com right after this short break. So there's no real way to avoid toxins or chemicals in our daily life. It seems like we're exposed to them no matter what we do in our lives, from paint fumes to mercury fillings, coal-fired plants, perfumes, soaps, off-gassing of carpets in our houses, and genetically modified foods, and foods that are sprayed with pesticides and herbicides, the xenoestrogens in plastics and car exhaust, secondhand smoke, even your dry cleaning and laundry detergents, even your mattresses have chemicals inside them that outgas. So getting these toxins and chemicals and poisons out of your bloodstream and out of your fat cells is going to be really critical moving forward in our society, because it seems like every year there's more and more chemicals that keep becoming introduced with new products in the market. So I would consider getting one of these far infrared saunas. We've got a great sauna developed by Phil Wilson, and I've known about his work for many, many years, and I'm so proud to be offering his sauna on our website. And he's been in this business since 1975. And the sauna is really great because it slows the aging process. It helps with weight loss and burning calories. I think you can burn like 600 calories in 15 or 20 minutes, and it helps to cleanse the skin. It improves your sleep and helps to prevent illnesses like flus and colds, as well as energizing the body. And it's great for improving blood circulation and promoting cellular renewal, as well as increasing metabolism and inducing profuse sweating. And it's really, really great. And the great thing is, too, is you don't produce any lactic acid. So you can sweat without producing any of this lactic acid that you would normally produce if you lifted weights or went for a big long run. So if you're interested in this, you can check it out, extremehealthradio.com/sauna. It's great because it sets up in about 2 to 5 minutes, and it's portable, and it's super easy to clean. It's got low electromagnetic field radiation coming off of it, and it produces energy and heat inside the sauna evenly. It's great machine. So if you're interested in sweating like this for only 15 minutes a day, it's great. It requires 0 preheating. It's got a 1-year warranty. And Phil Wilson is a great guy. We're so proud to be offering his saunas on our website. So if you're interested, check it out, extremehealthradio.com/sauna. Or you could check it out in our store, and it's $990 plus $25 shipping. And that's really a good deal because many of the saunas out there, you can check them out. They're in the thousands of dollars, $2,000 to $4,000. So this is great. You can buy it through PayPal. You don't even need a PayPal account. It's 100% secure. So consider doing this if you're interested in living a long, healthy, disease-free life. So check it out, extremehealthradio.com/sauna.
100% listener supported. Extreme Health Radio. Opening minds and transforming lives worldwide. Don't forget to join our thriving community for health tips, inspiration, and show updates at extremehealthradio.com/Facebook.
All right, we're having a great time here with Daniel Vitalis from surthrival.com and danielvitalis.com as well. And hopefully you are enjoying the interview. And I just wanted to apologize for those sounds during the show. I have turned that program off, and I am just going to sit and be happy with sitting. I think
I'm just going to focus on sitting today during this interview.
Yeah, that's the moral of the story. So also, don't forget to check out that sauna, too. We should ask Daniel about that, about the far infrared light and if that has any relation to the sun and the energy and that kind of thing. But don't forget to check out that sauna. It's really an amazing thing, and we use ours every single day.
We actually do.
Yeah, we actually do.
Thing.
30 minutes a day for me. And, good stuff. So, and also, if you would like to follow us on Facebook and join our community, we'd love to have you join. All you got to do is go to extremehealthradio.com/like and click the like button on there, and you'll be ready to go. And so, Daniel, I wanted to ask you really quickly, is there anything to the far infrared light on the sauna there that I was
you know what? I'm going to actually come back to that in a little bit because, and I'm really glad to have heard that ad that you guys ran because it's a critical part to this discussion of fire. So, you know, for the listeners who followed this whole interview series, you'll remember that when we talked about Earth, we talked about the earth that goes in. That's the stuff we need to eat. And then we talked about what comes back out because the body both needs nutrition and it needs to eliminate. Mm-hmm. We talked about water kind of going in and then water coming back out as our urine. We talked about inhaling and when we inspire air and then we exhale back out the waste material. Well, we also are going to talk today about absorbing this fire from the sun, but also eliminating through the skin. Okay. You know, so we have 4 organs of elimination. And there's one that I relate to each element. So when we talk about the elimination of solid waste, we talk about the colon. When we talk about eliminating water waste, we talk about the kidneys. When we talk about eliminating gaseous waste, we talk about the lungs. And when we talk about eliminating that heat energy or the sort of fire energy, that's coming out through the skin. So the same organ that absorbs this light from the sun is the same organ that eliminates heat and excess heat via sweating. And the sauna is a crucial piece of the puzzle there.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So where were we before the break? I forget where we were.
You know, I do too, but what we were saying was essentially that that the World Health Organization has recognized that the problems with not getting enough sun far outweigh the problems of getting too much sun. So in, you know, that classic pendulum effect, we went a little too far into this protect yourself from the sun. And I think where we were at is you guys were talking about people wearing parasols and umbrellas, where you live, trying to protect themselves from the sun. You know, I was thinking about being down by the equator a couple years ago in Ecuador, and I saw some Japanese women who were wearing face shields. It was like a sunglass lens, but the size of a welder's mask. Wow. That they wore to completely shield their faces. And,
that's incredible.
You know, it's interesting because, you know, I know people do have concerns about aging their skin. However, I'm not suggesting people need to lay out all day in the sun. What we need to do is take a gauge, basically, of how dark our skin is and then determine our sun exposure needs based on that. So here's the thing. We just talked about 200,000 years of adaptation to living in the light of the sun. And over time, as people spread around the globe, and some people went to the more extreme latitudes and some people stayed closer to the equator, our skin sort of differentiated. It's likely that the first human beings had very darkly pigmented skin, like the skin colors that we see that come out of people that come from people with African origins. That's likely the original skin coloration. And as people headed more north, of course, their skin lightened. They produced less melanin. Now, here's how I want people to think of melanin. Melanin is the pigment, by the way, that's in your skin that gives you a tan. Or if you're somebody with dark skin, that's where the color of your skin's coming from. It's coming from this pigment called melanin. Now, when people use sunscreen, what they're doing is they're actually giving themselves like an artificial tan. That's essentially what a sunscreen is. So sunscreens contain pigments that absorb, they're translucent to your naked eye, but they absorb UVB radiation the same way that your melanin does. Now, the problem that we have is that people aren't producing much melanin because they're not getting much sun. Your body only produces melanin when you get sun. So when you get sun, you produce a tan, and the tan is your sunscreen. I say that again. When you get a tan, the tan is your sunscreen. So you can just think about those kinds of glasses, like prescription glasses, that some people have that when they go outside automatically darken, and become like sunglasses. And then when they go into low light situations, they go back to being clear. That's how your skin is. So when we go out into sun, our body produces melanin. That melanin is like sunglasses to protect ourselves from those deleterious effects of UV radiation like we were talking about. Like, for instance, the fact that UV light in excess without protection can damage collagen fibers. That's one of the reasons it causes sort of wrinkling over time for people and ages the skin. But when we have a tan, we're more protected from that. And when people use sunscreen, it's just basically because they don't have a sufficient tan. So they need something to protect their, sort of, I mean, this is going to sound rude, but I got to say it because I think it helps us, their sort of maggoty white skin. That's sort of how we end up. Like, if you've ever, sometimes, in the survival skills world, we'll look for grubs and we'll break open old rotting trees. And what you find inside are these large grubs, these maggoty colored grubs, because they don't see any sunlight, so their skin is like this pasty, chalky white. Well, that's sort of how a lot of people's bodies are, right? Yeah. And maybe you guys see less of that where you live, but come up to New England for a little bit and get the clothes off of some of these farm boys, and what you'll see is like, wow, very pasty skin. So when they're like that, they don't have any protection from the sun. Now, there are also people who are very fair-skinned because of where they hail from. So an example would be somebody from the northern European climates where there's consistently cloudy days and low levels of UV. Those people don't produce much melanin. This is an epigenetic, this is sort of an adaptation to low levels of sun. Right. So they don't produce much melanin, and the idea is anytime the sun broke through the clouds where they lived, they could produce some vitamin D, right? They don't want to block too much of that.
Exactly.
So they would have very pale skin. But people who come from Africa, of course, they were getting so much sun all the time, sunny days every day, hot, sunny, hot, sunny. They needed really dark skin to protect themselves from getting too much UV. So I think that concept makes sense to everybody.
Yeah, so it's almost like you're saying their skin is a form of sunglasses kind of a thing.
Exactly. Now, here's the thing.
Yeah,
we're now global. And that means that there are people who live near the equator with pale skin, and there are people with very dark skin who live in the northern climates.
Right.
This creates some serious issues that I think are not being sufficiently addressed. And I think one of the reasons they're not being addressed is because people tiptoe around the issue of race. Yeah. And everybody's so concerned about being PC. Nobody wants to talk about this. But what happens when somebody, great example for me, incidentally, I haven't used sunscreen in probably ever. And I was a ocean lifeguard for a lot of years. And I developed a very, very serious base tan because I would be on a lifeguard stand for 8 hours a day, every day, all summer.
Right.
And I lifeguarded with some girls who were incredibly fairly complected, with red hair and lots of freckles and no ability, apparently, to produce melanin. I mean, so little that it wouldn't be noticeable. They just didn't tan.
Wow.
And every day they would burn.
Yeah.
And every day they'd come back at the end of the day and you'd go like, wow, they're burned. And then a couple of weeks in, their noses were peeling. And a couple of weeks past that, they're getting like scar tissue. Because no matter what they did, they could not, even with sunblock, even with hats, these girls would burn. Their skin was designed to live in a place where there was almost no sun ever. That makes sense?
Yeah.
If those people moved down to Africa, it's highly likely that they would develop skin cancer over time. And actually, we see a huge issue with this because I say the English exported a lot of people to Australia. And the climate and the UV radiation in Australia is very different than it is in England. And we see that white people in Australia develop a lot of skin cancers. Conversely, I live in Maine, and we have a significant population of people from Somalia who've come here.
Interesting.
Now, these are very dark-skinned people. And the major issue here is that no matter how much sun they get, they're not getting enough. Unless they spend noontime every day in the sun naked, they're just not getting enough UV because to penetrate the dark sunglass of their skin,
right,
they need lots and lots of sun exposure, which means that they put themselves at risk for chronic vitamin D deficiencies. So I recommend a book right now called The UV Advantage. And that book is by the doctor who really discovered vitamin D3 in its active form. And he gives us a table in there where we can sort of judge our skin complexion and then how much sun exposure we need. Average, sort of white-skinned person is going to need about 15 minutes a day, noontime sun on as much skin as they can expose to have sufficient vitamin D levels. But as the person gets darker and darker, that could be as much as 3 times what they need. They may need, as much as 3 times that. I'm a sort of olive complected person. I definitely need more sunlight than my partner who's, she's more lightly complected. She can get a little bit, she needs a little bit more. And then obviously a real dark skinned person needs a lot more than I would need.
So she would need less than you because she's less.
Correct.
Is that right?
And so imagine then we got people on either extreme. So we get the almost albino, non-pigmented person. We get the Mediterranean or sort of Middle Eastern complected person. And then we get the darkest melanin pigment we can find in somebody from African descent, right? Very dark person. And we put all 3 of them out in the sun. At noon, when the UV is at its peak, that's really when we want to try to get sun. And we put them out on a summer day and all 3 are naked. We could say after 10 to 15 minutes, our very pale person's they're fully charged up. Maybe a half an hour in, our Middle Eastern person's charged up. Maybe an hour or 2 in, our African person's charged up completely at max capacity, right? So, those are very rough numbers, and I think each person needs to really gauge this for themselves, but I want to give people a general idea.
What was the name of that book really quickly?
The UV Advantage.
The book is called The UV Advantage.
Okay, good.
And it's a fantastic book that dispels, it's sort of the reference on the topic. So the next piece I want to say is this. When that UV light strikes our skin, we begin to form a sort of proto-form of vitamin D. It's not the active form yet, but it begins to form. Okay. This is a really important piece. You guys may be familiar with this research. If you're not, or if the listeners aren't, this is an important piece to remember. So, listen up here, guys. When UV strikes your skin, you create some proto-form of vitamin D, but it takes up to 48 hours to absorb that from the skin. It's in the sebum of your skin. It's in the oil of your skin.
Okay.
And if you go from being out in the sun and you jump in the hot shower and you soap up, you wash that off.
Okay.
And you won't actually absorb it. And so you'll produce much less vitamin D than if you allow that to really soak in. Now, I'm not a believer in much soap at all on the body. I think that there's great other ways to clean the body. So I think stripping the oils off the skin is something we want to avoid. But for the average person out there, right, they get zestfully clean when they go in the bathtub and shower. They lather themselves down like we see in those soap commercials. And they literally wash that vitamin D off their body, and it does not get absorbed in. And the thing about ultraviolet light, especially for people who live in the northern latitudes, every day of sunlight is like a deposit in your bank account. The bank account in this case is your liver. The bank is your liver. And what you're putting in the account is vitamin D. Now, we can store vitamin D because it's fat soluble. It can stay in the body for a while. And our goal is to deposit enough vitamin D into our liver so that we can make it through the winter to when the sun is strong enough for us to make UV again. Because basically from the beginning of autumn till the beginning of spring, there's not enough UV in the northern latitudes for us to make vitamin D. So we have to store it up so that we have enough to get through the winter without getting deficient.
So it'll actually store for a matter of months then?
It will, because it's a fat-soluble vitamin. So when it comes to our water-soluble vitamins, an example would be vitamin C. We can't really store it because we pee it out. But when it's oil-soluble, in the same way that we end up storing certain toxins for a long time because they're stored in our body fat, well, there's nutrients like that. Vitamin A is an example. Vitamin D is an example. They store in our fat, and primarily vitamin D stores in our liver. Now, some people might be wondering then, wait a second, if in the northern climates it's hard to make enough vitamin D and you can only make it for a short time, how have people survived up there? And an example would be the Inuit. How did they live so far north? Obviously, they can't lay out naked a lot in the sun, and even if they could, the sun's at such an angle where it's difficult most of the year to make vitamin D. How did they do it? Well, they would survive up there by getting their vitamin D from dietary sources, primarily from fatty fish and from eating liver. Liver and fatty fish are the best dietary sources for vitamin D. There's some in eggs. There's some in certain mushrooms, but not sufficient. Primarily, if we're going to try to survive off dietary vitamin D, we're going to need to eat liver. We're going to need to eat fatty fish. And that's where we hear this idea of cod liver oil. It's very rich in vitamin D. But liver is incredibly rich in vitamin D. In fact, up in the Arctic, there are animals like the polar bear and seal whose livers are so rich in vitamin D, you can actually overdose on vitamin D from eating it. So that is how people survived up there. So for those of us who aren't living on an incredibly liver-rich diet and are depending on the sun for our vitamin D, we need to think about going outside in the noonday sun with some skin exposure as being as important as getting, the nutrients we need from food. It's literally a nutrient.
Interesting. Wow, this is fascinating. We got to take a short break here. I got one little question before the break, and what do you think about the issues many people are bringing up these days with liver, eating organs, and the fact that this Fukushima thing and all these chemicals are being stored in these types of organs in fish and salmon and these types of things with the Fukushima and things?
So my position is a little bit wishy-washy here. I've got to admit, I'm going to try to take the most balanced approach here. Okay. There are, unfortunately, an incident like Fukushima pollutes the highest quality foods on the planet. So the thing about foods from the ocean, as an example, these are primarily wild foods. They're the last wild foods that are really in people's diets. Right. And unfortunately, now we're dealing, those are our wild fishes and our seaweeds. Unfortunately, those are being polluted with radionucleotides. What do? I don't know. What about, yes, livers become a storage place not just for vitamin D, but for lots of fat-soluble toxins. However, it's probably the most nutrient-dense food on the planet would be liver. So how are we going to deal with this? I don't think it's as simple as, we're just going to stop eating it, but we are going to have to get a lot more thoughtful about clean sources.
Yeah. We were talking with Dr. Lawrence Wilson, I think, a while back, and he was saying the same thing, that liver and a lot of these organ meats are some of the most powerful foods on the planet, but he no longer recommends them because of this whole toxicity issue. So that's why I brought that up. But we'll be right back with Daniel Vitalis. I want to ask him after the break about, I thought it was really interesting what you were saying about the washing of yourself, and maybe washing your armpits instead, and just places like that instead of lathering all over, and
let's talk about that.
Cholesterol and things like that. So we'll be right back with Daniel Vitalis. Make sure to visit his website, danielvitalis.com, as well as sirthrival.com, where he's got tons and tons of great, amazing products. So check that out, and we'll be right back after this break. Rebounding is, in my mind, one of the best ways to detoxify your lymphatic system, and it's the only exercise on earth that will actually detoxify your lymphatic system. And your lymph system is responsible for storing toxins and chemicals and poisons that you're exposed to, and there's no pump for the lymph system. It doesn't have a heart, so you have to move it up and down, and it's filled with millions of one-way valves that get squeezed and pushed and opened and closed every time you jump. And we feel like we've found the best rebounder on the market today. It's the Rolls Royce of rebounding. It's called the Bellicon. And I highly, highly stand behind this product. It's absolutely amazing. If you want to hear what some of our guests said about it, check them out on our store. You can listen to what a lot of our guests have said about rebounding, and the Bellicon in particular. So a lot of times people will go on the rebounder with oxygen for cancer if they're really sick. And it's one of the most powerful things you can do to cleanse your body and to exercise every single cell in your body, every organ in your body. It's the only internal organ exercise you could do. And it's absolutely incredible. It also helps to rebuild bone density because of the up and down motion, the G-force that gets applied to every cell of your body, and it tightens and tones your body, and it's just really, really great aerobic exercise. And the Bellicon is made with straps, these bungee cords instead of springs, so it's silent, and they have a warranty on it. It's the best rebounder on the market today. So if you're in the market for one, I would highly recommend just saving up and getting the Bellicon, because there's no other rebounder on the market that's better than this thing. I firmly believe that. So if you're interested in it, check it out, extremehealthradio.com/Bellicon. That's B as in boy, ELLICON. And you can learn more about it and watch the videos on that page too. So thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy your rebounder, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
All free shows, all the time, on Extreme Health Radio. Opening minds and transforming lives worldwide. Join our community today. Sign up to our email list and instantly get our free gift to you, along with loads of inspirational content and cutting-edge tips to help change your life at extremehealthradio.com/subscribe.
And we've got Club Kate going on over there.
Kate, like that little dancing?
Kate's dancing here in the studio.
There was no gong, though.
There was no gong, that's right. We've shut the gong down for the day.
Yes.
So I just want to let you guys know also, don't forget to check out that rebounder. Really, really great machine. And we love using ours, so hopefully you enjoy it. And you can check that out in our store as well, if you like. And as the lady said, feel free to sign up to our newsletter list. We've got lots of great stuff coming out of there, and a great ebook that we can send you immediately that you can get for free. Actually, no, you can get it on Amazon for $15, but we'll send it to you for free. So
that's right.
Don't forget to check that out. And I wanted to ask Daniel after the break here. I don't want to get too far off topic here, but I wanted to ask you about this. What do you think are the a couple things? One is about perhaps like just washing maybe your genitals, your armpits, and things like that instead of doing a full body wash like you were talking about. And then also I wanted to ask you about getting sun, like laying out in the sun naked. Is there an advantage to getting sun on those parts of your body that we typically don't do?
I love these questions. I love you guys. You're great. Okay. Let's start with the second question, the latter question there.
Okay.
Most of the diseases that excessive UV radiation can cause are benign, except malignant melanoma, which is the deadly form of skin cancer. Now, what's fascinating about that skin cancer is that typically people develop the melanoma on parts of their body that get the least sun exposure.
Right. I've noticed that.
So they don't get it on the forearm where they're getting the sunlight all the time. They get it like on their, pasty white thigh. Why is that? I think it is crucial that we get sun on as much of our bodies as we can. Now, for me, in being a rewilder and somebody who has, I remember the first sort of nudist place I went, all the kind of fear around that and the discomfort around that and really facing down it's essentially, if you picture it, it's like when you turn, 4 years old, you're handed a set of clothes and you're never allowed to take it off again, right? I mean, that's kind of what goes on. It's like
right.
You're handed some clothes and it's like you can't be naked around anybody ever again unless you're trying to make a baby.
Right.
So, and for women, I mean, it's like, here's a bra, you never take it off, right? Mm-hmm. So what we see is that these cancers are forming in places that aren't getting much sun exposure. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really crucial, and I think it's good for people to confront that. It's fantastic if you can get to places where you can be naked. One practice that I love is just going hiking and finding spots where sometimes quite close to where there's people, but where no one can see you and no one's coming, and you can just strip down and lay out. I think it's great. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, I like living in a place where I can step outside naked whenever I want, and I make sure that everywhere I live is like that. So
yeah, I think that's important.
It is crucial.
Too. Yeah, I think that's really important. Getting that sun on your skin in places like that. I don't know. I just think that that's more natural. I mean, that's more the way we should be living.
Yeah, and men should know that when you get sun exposure, you produce more testosterone. And this has been known since the 60s. Certain spots on the body cause you to produce more testosterone than others. Your back is an example of a place. When you get sun on your back, you produce more testosterone than sun just falling on your face. But men, sun exposure to your testicles causes you to produce a lot of testosterone.
Really?
That's very valuable knowledge. So, yeah, man, get those balls in the sun. It's important. Women, get your breasts in the sun. It's important. So, moving on from that conversation to just say about skin cleaning, the way I really see soap as being reserved for places that, get a little bit funkier than other places. For me, that's really like my ear canal, my armpits, my groin, and my butt. Everywhere else, I don't really, feel like I need to wash the oils out of my skin. But I remember, and I think a lot of people's experience will validate this. I remember when I was growing up in my, very toxic lifestyle that I was enmeshed in, like so many other people, that when I would get even a little sweat on my skin, I'd feel really dirty. And I'd feel like I wanted to wash. And looking back, what I see is a couple things were going on. One is that my skin was a route for the elimination of fat-soluble toxins. So I would feel those on my skin. I would feel the sort of need to clean my skin after I'd sweat because my body would be eliminating toxins. The second thing is that I was eating a primarily omega-6 fat diet, and mostly I was eating hydrogenated fats and trans fats. And so those would be coming out of my skin. And when that was on my skin, I would feel dirty. Now, because I'm on a clean lifestyle and I've been on that for a long time, and I eat really clean foods and I eat good quality fats, my oils that secrete from my skin don't feel dirty to me. In fact, they feel clean. I feel really clean after I sweat now. So I think that that's something that happens as you cleanse more, and you guys may be able to validate that.
Yeah, it's definitely something that's changed in our lives, and that makes a lot of sense. Just washing those parts of your body that kind of really, I guess, would be more prone to sweat or things like that.
Right.
But
I've noticed the cleaner we've got. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, it's that those areas produce more oils and certain types of oils that bacteria live on, and those bacteria produce those smells that we encounter. So that's actually the byproduct of bacteria who are eating our oils. So we can wash those areas, but we don't want to we want to realize like stripping oils out of our skin creates a couple problems. It creates the problem we talked about a moment ago, which is that we don't have, we wash away the vitamin D that we're producing. Another issue is that we create areas of low acidity and higher alkalinity. And now here, this is an important piece. fats are made of fatty acids, and that tells us those are acidic. Fats are acidic, right? Does that make sense? A fatty acid.
Right.
Now, the fat layer on our skin, that oil layer, is called the acid mantle. That acid mantle creates an environment for the organisms that live on our skin to enmesh themselves. They need that acidic environment. And what happens with soap is very alkaline. Soap is made with lye. It's alkaline. When we wash an area of our skin, we break away, we strip away the acid force field, if you will, and we create an opening in that. That opening allows organisms that prefer an alkaline environment to invade that area, and those tend to be more pathogenic. So you could think of the acid layer of our skin as being the environment or the soil for the acid-loving bacteria like Lactobacillus acidophilus, which means acid lover, to live, and they function like a force field. They're literally our primary line, first line defense. They're the soldiers surrounding the castle. They live in acid, and when we wash that away with soap, we wash them away with it. We create an environment they can't live in. And those are our symbionts. We want them living there. They protect us so that when other organisms that are dangerous to us, like staph, land on our skin, the good organisms that live in our acid layer can eat those, gobble them up, create an environment where they can't live. We don't want to wash that away too much. So instead, what we could focus on is things like dry brushing our skin, wet brushing our skin. Of course, you can buy a beautiful, natural bristled brush and keep one in the shower. You could keep one in your sauna. You could keep one sort of, wherever you do your exercise in the morning, whatever, where you can brush your skin. That'll remove a lot of the dead skin and allow you to sort of feel exfoliated, but not strip away your acid layer. And of course, I just think sauna is really one of the greatest ways to clean the skin as well.
That's interesting. Yeah, I want to get to the sauna in just 1 second, but I was actually listening to something, I forget what it was recently, where they were talking about how sun exposure is actually really, really beneficial for helping to split, I guess, these the cholesterol and make, to naturally lower cholesterol. And many people think that the sun is so bad and for all these reasons, but it's one of the main ways that our body, I forget the science of what they were saying, but it actually lowers cholesterol and balances it in a more healthy way. Have you heard that?
Right. And, it lowers our blood pressure as well. And, it's also basically what is the story here? The story is that if we don't get enough sun exposure, our body systems start to break down. And I want to also impart this is that vitamin D, once it's its active form, so the vitamin D gets formed on the skin, it gets absorbed into the bloodstream, it circulates to the liver where it's changed slightly, and then it circulates to the kidneys again where it's changed slightly. Now in its active form, vitamin D is actually a steroidal hormone, not a vitamin. Active vitamin D is a steroid hormone, and all our steroid hormones are based on cholesterol. These steroidal hormones, they're fat soluble, which is one of the reasons it can accumulate in our body. But it is literally a steroid. You can imagine what happens, how we start to become flaccid and weak. Our blood pressure goes up, our cholesterol goes up, we get more depressed, we don't sleep as well, and we start to get cancer when we don't get enough vitamin D. The other things, and here's the ones that everybody knows. If a kid doesn't get enough vitamin D, they develop rickets because vitamin D accumulates in our intestines where it helps us to absorb calcium and phosphorus, which is what our bones are made of. If we don't get enough vitamin D, our bones can't form completely. And so kids would end up with bow legs and, bones that were poorly formed, and this was called rickets. And this is important to hear. If they weren't adding vitamin D by law to milk, we would have rickets everywhere around the country. The only reason we're not seeing bow-legged rickets children is because we add pharmaceutical vitamin D to milk. And so many people drink milk, it protects them from rickets. But we do that, we add vitamin D because we had a rickets problem in this country. We fortify iodine because we had a thyroid issues in this country.
That's right.
We fortify vitamin B3 because we had pellagra issues in this country. I mean, people are so vitamin deficient that the government has to add vitamins to their deficient food in order for them not to have outward signs of these diseases.
Wow.
Now, the rickets happens in children. In adults, what happens is something called osteomalacia, and this is a deep aching in the bones. And this kind of thing gets called fibromyalgia, gets called chronic fatigue syndrome. It gets labeled all these other things when often it's a vitamin D deficiency.
What about scoliosis too, maybe?
Scoliosis is often happens at childhood, so I won't, at birth, and I don't want to necessarily associate that, but we can say osteoporosis for sure.
Wow.
So, oh man, grandma's bones have holes in them. Why? Well, she's not absorbing the calcium and phosphorus from her diet and incorporating those into her bones because she's not getting enough vitamin D.
Wow.
And then additionally, vitamin D is used by the immune system. Vitamin D destroys cancers. So again, without sufficient vitamin D, we are susceptible to prostate cancer, breast cancer, lung cancer, colon cancer, colorectal cancer. And another piece that I want to add in here is that, and we've touched on it, our circadian rhythm is regulated by our vitamin by our sun exposure. So our serotonin and melatonin. And keep in mind that melatonin starts being produced when we're in darkness. And it stops being produced when we have optic light intake, optic sunlight intake. So in other words, once you open your eyes and the light travels down that optic nerve, that's when you stop producing it. This is one of the reasons it's important if you get up in the night, say you get up to pee or to check on something, that you don't turn lights on if you can help it, because it will affect your ability to sleep. It throws off your circadian rhythm. So we want bright light in the day and we want no light at night if we can get it. The last piece I want to throw in here, and this brings us back to the early conversation where you guys were joking about your moods if you don't get enough sunlight. We produce endorphins when we get sunlight. These are opiates. So we get high by being in the sun. And I don't think I need to explain that to anybody. Everybody can feel that. You get high when you're in the sun. You produce opiates.
Wow, that's crazy. So now when people get up in the middle of the night and they turn on the light, is that really bad, or is it?
Well, what happens is that you stop producing melatonin, and then it takes a lot longer to get back to sleep. So if you're getting up in the night, if you can develop the discipline of keeping the lights off, when you get back to bed, you'll fall asleep much more quickly.
Interesting.
And so you'll sleep better. So that's a practice that I've been into for a long time, is just trying to avoid it. And often, especially traveling and such, you'll see, or just living with somebody, people don't always do that. So I'm in the habit too of, if I think somebody's going to turn a light on, or if I have to walk by somebody else who's got a light on, I really shield myself from that light so that I can, maintain my sleep cycle.
Yeah.
Are you talking like if people get up and go to the bathroom and they have a tiny little like dim night light, is that still going to disrupt you, or is that?
The brighter the light, the more it will disrupt you.
Gotcha, right.
The brighter the light. So you can imagine the ambient light from a nightlight's different than looking at that nightlight.
Right.
And that's different than turning on a light, and that's different than looking into that light bulb.
Right.
So the more light that we get, keep in mind that the light outside, like in sunlight, is thousands of times brighter than the light in our homes.
Right.
So, it's not like the lights in our homes are particularly bright. They're not. One other piece I wanted to add for you guys too is just this, that vitamin D is required in the regulation of up to 1,000 of our genes. So, we have 20,000 genes.
Wow.
In the human genome, and 1,000 of those, are regulated by vitamin D. So our gene expression, our whole epigenome, who we are, what we are, is incredibly influenced by the amount of sunlight we get. So I don't know if you know this term troglodyte, but it refers to a cave dweller.
Wow.
And I often joke that people are like troglodytes, like they're like cave dwellers hiding from the sunlight. And I love just this biblical reference that when the deeds of men are wicked, they want to hide in the shadows. Right? It's like when we hide from the light because we're not feeling good about ourselves, right? We want to like hide in the darkness.
Right.
And there's this idea of like we've turned away from the light of the sun, right? Or the light of God almost. Like there's this concept that permeates the spiritual teachings of the world where all things good are related to light.
Wow.
And all things like sort of bad are related to darkness. And I think ultimately as a species we need to ask ourselves like why have we turned away from the light, and why are we so obsessed with artificial light? We spend our time in the light of the television, in the light of the iPhone, in the artificial lights of our homes, and we're spending less and less time in natural sunlight. Now, you don't really have to convince anybody that it feels better to be in natural sunlight. It's just that that's not what we're doing. I think we need to really explore that more.
Right.
We need to get a little bit more sunlight.
Right, and it was interesting. A while back, I was talking with the guy that did the intro to the show, Sean Stevenson, and he was explaining to me about how even being exposed to artificial light inside your house affects your vitamin D and ability to sleep. And even when that artificial light just touches your skin, you don't even have to look into it with your eyes. And I thought that was really interesting too.
We will soon understand the real ramifications of the photoreception capabilities of the skin. So, we're so early in our research. We're so early in understanding. Of course, if you had asked, the shaman of your tribe 10,000 years ago, if, your body could sense light just on the skin, it would be a no-brainer. Of course it can. But now we have to go through this process of proving it to ourselves scientifically so we can validate that. But we are learning that. And obviously everything we've talked about today really does, it shows us your skin is like we literally photosynthesize vitamin D. Plants photosynthesize sugars. We eat sugars and we photosynthesize vitamin D. But we are photosynthetic, just like plants. And so just like plants, we require sunlight to be vigorous and to thrive.
That's interesting. So let's talk a couple minutes, just wrapping up here. Like one of the things that you mentioned on one of our past shows is that Flux program, justgetflux.com, I think is the website. And we use that. And we've been using a lot of candles lately. And we use that sauna that you talked about. And, what are some good things that people can do, getting out in the sun for a couple minutes, like you said? And,
well, getting bright light early in the day is really important. Okay. So, the earlier, first thing in the morning, if you could walk out into full-blown bright sunlight naked, studies show you would sleep better that night. Wow. Because it sets the circadian rhythm. Okay. In the same way, once it's nighttime, we want to start really minimizing the amount of light we're getting. So we can start to dim the lights down. We can switch to things like candles, which are wonderful. And for our machines, we can use programs like Flux. And, I just want to say shout out to Flux. You guys are great. And please make something for iPhone. Mm-hmm. I would like that a lot. But Flux is a program that basically, it knows where you are in the world and it adjusts the light coming out of your computer to be more like the light of the sun at that time of day. And once it's late at night, you can set your computer to almost put out like a candle-like light. So it goes from being a bright blue light that matches the noonday sun. And computers were designed to put off light like the sun in noontime, but they weren't designed to adjust. So it changes the light coming out of your computer to a much more orange colored light or red spectrum part of the sun toward the evening, and that allows you to sleep better. So I think that's a really crucial thing. In addition to electromagnetically, remember all electromagnetism is light. So radio waves are light, X-rays are light, microwaves are light, Wi-Fi is light. Mm-hmm. The signals coming out of your machines is all light. It's invisible to your eye, but it's light. And the more of that stuff you can shut down, the better you're going to sleep. So it's all light. It's bright light. You're just not aware of it because your eyes don't see it. So in addition to dimming down our computers and dimming down our lights at night, it's a really good idea to dim down or quiet down or let all of your machines go dark. So that means phones on airplane mode. That means computers shut off. That means Wi-Fi unplugged. All those kind of things allow us to sleep better.
Interesting. And do you yourself use a sauna quite regularly, or?
All right, so this is the key piece on the flip. We've talked all about the nutrients that come from sunlight. Now let's talk about how we eliminate. Our skin is the largest organ in our body. It's also the largest organ of elimination, and it is one of the truly amazing gifts that we're given because it can eliminate both water-soluble toxins and fat-soluble toxins. Water-soluble toxins we eliminate really well from the kidneys, but we can't pee out oils. So we can only get water-soluble toxins out through our urine. We can defecate out fat-soluble toxins, but the skin allows us to do both. So when we sweat, water and oil come out, and those will carry away both water-soluble toxins, like lactic acid, and fat-soluble toxins, like heavy metals, radioactive particles, on and on and on, pesticides, herbicides, things like that. I noticed in your ad for the sauna, you were talking about how one of the great benefits of sweating in a sauna is that you're not exercising, so you're not producing lactic acid, which means that you don't have that burden of lactic acid to eliminate. And that's great. And I want to add something to that. When we're exercising, our body's primarily functioning off its sympathetic nervous system. We're sort of in a fight or flight response. We're in a highly charged up, adrenalized state when we're exercising. Mm-hmm. When we're in that state, our body can't really detoxify very well. When we are in a sort of energized fight or flight response, our body shuts off its detoxification pathways. They're not as important as making sure we survive whatever we're doing, right? You can picture that. If you're in a fight for your life, detoxifying at that moment is not really that important. What's most important is that you survive. And that's what your fight or flight response does. And when we exercise, we tend to be in that sympathetic nervous system. When we get into a sauna, and especially when we get into that, I watch my dog will lay out in the sunlight, and I see how, and she's black, primarily black. So I see her lay out in the sun, and her coat gets so warm, and she gets so gushy and relaxed. There is far infrared coming from the sun. The sun is full spectrum. She's absorbing that like we do when we go in the sauna, and it's causing her to relax. When you go into the sauna, like a far infrared sauna like you discussed, your body goes into a deep relaxation mode, and your sympathetic nervous system shuts down and your parasympathetic nervous system turns on. And when that's active, that's the nervous system, part of your nervous system that's active when you meditate. That becomes active, and your detoxification pathways open up wide. Why is this important? It's important because when you go running and you sweat, you're not necessarily eliminating very much toxicity from your body. But when you sweat in the sauna, you eliminate a lot of toxicity from your body. So sweating in a relaxed state is how we eliminate. The other thing is that what's wonderful about the sauna is that it puts you in a parasympathetic nervous system response as if you were meditating. So it's almost a hack. It's like a trick to get yourself into a meditative, relaxed state, to decompress stress, to reverse the effects of stress, and to get your body eliminating deep toxicity that's stored in your body fat, because it can come out in the oils of your skin. So I think, sauna is one of the most crucial detoxification, really health practices that we could take on, especially in this era of heavy toxicity, particularly fat-soluble toxins. Earlier you were saying, should we give up things like fish and liver because of the toxicity in the environment? My opinion, that's a tough one. That's like saying, should koala bears give up eucalyptus leaves? It's like, pretty important, right? So what actually might make more sense is that we choose the cleanest sources we can, and then we make sure we do things like sauna to eliminate any toxins that are in that food. Because, like you said in your ad, there's no way to really avoid all the toxins now. Now they're everywhere and they're diffuse. And so really what we need are strategies to get stuff out of us. Sauna is like a tactic for your overall cleansing strategy. And that's a tactic that I think has just huge implications. And it's not like it's new. We see sauna being used all through history, or maybe sometimes even in a more proto form like the sweat lodge. We see that this has existed forever, but it's never been more important than today. So that's a fantastic way for you to cleanse yourself with fire, essentially heat your body up to the core till you become hyperthermic, and then your body starts to purge fluid out and oils out through the skin in an effort to essentially cool your core down. And so we're taking advantage. It's a technology for us to take advantage of our own thermal regulation and use that as a detoxification tool. So very, very powerful technology. And I think owning a sauna is like, it's kind of like owning a blender. Like I own a Vitamix blender because that for me has been one of the greatest investments in my health over the course of time. It's an expensive blender, but over the course of time, wow, has it paid for itself. Sauna's the same way. Anybody who's really serious about their health wants to figure out some way to get access to a sauna, whether they buy it, whether they build it, whether they get a membership to a place that has one, whether they become really good friends with somebody who has one, whatever you got to do, but if you can get a sauna into your life, I just think it's crucial.
Yeah, what I like about them too is they heat you up. You kind of mentioned it in the core. I mean, it almost feels like that those waves are getting down into your bones. It really does. Yeah, it's really
they penetrate very deeply, and I think that's the real magic of the far infrared sauna. I mean, I really do like all kinds of saunas, and so wood-fired saunas I think are wonderful. Sweat lodges where you're really using hot rocks. I mean, it's amazing. Oh, yeah. And I do own a far infrared sauna, and I really like that technology as well. And the idea is that you're penetrating more deeply. So you're heating yourself from the core out rather than a traditional sauna, which heats you from the skin in. So the thing about a far infrared sauna is you sit in it the first few minutes, it doesn't feel that hot. I've been in wood-fired saunas. You walk in, it's 220 degrees. the first breath burns your nostril hairs.
Right.
You know, and you go, wow, this is hot. But you go to the far infrared sauna, you think it's not that hot, and then kind of out of nowhere, your core is suddenly heated up because you're being like heated from within, and you start to purge stuff out from the deep layers of the body. So again, totally crucial. So, you know, here's the simple recap. The simple recap is we need to get sun exposure on our skin, and we need to sweat in a relaxed state. And ultimately, all of this stuff in between, talking about vitamin D and different types of cancers and melatonin and serotonin, neurotransmitters, all that stuff is all a lot of mental masturbation, because you don't need to know that. All you need to know, all you need to remember is get sun exposure whenever I can, because there's less and less available to us now, right? We're seeing the skies clouded over a lot more than we used to. We're seeing a lot more airplane pollution, whatever you want to call that. We're seeing a lot more of that stuff. We're not getting as much of that crisp blue sky sunlight. So when we see it, we want to grab it. We want to fill the bank account, right? Like fill that bank of the liver with our vitamin D. And we want to sweat in a relaxed state. And so in the recap over this whole call series, it's real simple stuff. We eat clean food. We drink clean water. We breathe clean air. We get sunlight. Those are really the four most crucial things you could do in this life. And if you remember those four things, you're so ahead of the game. I mean, it's amazing. Those four things couldn't be simpler. And yet 7 billion people are walking around in the dark, bumping into each other, trying to figure out how to get their health back. And they are willing to be poisoned, cut, burned, and radiated by people who claim to be healthcare professionals. And all because they can't figure out these simple things. Eat clean food, drink clean water, breathe clean air, get sunlight.
Yeah, we've become so far detached from just the most basic, simple things in life. I mean, these are things that back in prehistoric times, I'm sure people just knew intuitively, like you've talked about. And in today's world, you walk around New York City and, you know, you could walk for a half hour and not even see the sun because of the buildings. And I mean, it's just amazing how unnatural our life is these days. So we really got to
be proactive.
Yeah, be proactive.
And just remember that the thing about the primitive world, or the early humans, existence, is you didn't have to know this stuff. There was no way there wasn't anything but clean food.
Right.
There wasn't any water that wasn't clean. I mean, it was all clean air. You got sunlight no matter what. There wasn't a way to avoid it. These are the factors, these elements are the factors that drove our adaptation. So it's really, the problem is that we've created a sort of virtual reality that exists in a bubble outside of the elements. We have left those noble elements behind and we've moved inside. And that has caused the degradation of our health. And we need to kind of reverse that trend and start getting outside into the elements a little bit more.
I love it. I love it. So in closing, are you working on anything coming up? Any new projects? Anything going on that we don't know about?
Yeah, I've got a new website that I'm going to be releasing in the coming year. And it's going to be a great resource for people who are interested in everything we've been talking about. And it's going to be a place where people can find information from a variety of authors and sources. So I'm not going to reveal too much about that, but that's a project I have in the works. And even bigger is, I'm working on a apprenticeship program where I'm going to take students on who want to go much more deeply into these practices and really explore them and other really essential skills for living. So I'm going to be teaching more hands-on in the coming year, I think. And so that's pretty exciting stuff as well.
Wow. So people can learn more about that and stay up to date with how you're going to be doing that by just keeping up to date with your website?
Yep, go to danielvitalis.com, insterthrival.com, and sign up for our newsletters, and that's where we sort of put all that stuff out, and we don't spam you or hit you with stuff that sucks, so you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. That is so cool. I love it. Man, what a great series. That was so much fun. Thanks, Daniel.
Yeah, looking forward to being back with you guys in the future.
Yeah, let's definitely keep in touch. All right, so Mr. Daniel Vitalis.
I was going to say, so exactly that. So, Mr. Daniel Vitalis.
Mr. Daniel Vitalis.
Gosh, that guy is a fireball. Talk about fire. He is passionate about what he talks about, and that guy knows so much information. His mind's just got to be like a library.
Oh my gosh, it's crazy.
A stored up wealth of information. He's so cool. He's just somebody you want to be buddies with, and you could never run out of things to talk about.
I know. I bet you we could have some as Walter Martin used to say, some wing dingers.
We'd have some wing dingers.
If we just hung out and grabbed some food with them one day, and I bet we could talk about all kinds of stuff that we probably wouldn't talk about on the air. Actually, we should talk about that on the air one day, maybe on a Tuesday.
That would be cool.
We'll do our Tuesday show about all the kind of crazy stuff. But you can just listen to him and get the idea that he is really switched on. His mind is, been awakened, and he kind of gets an idea of what, how things work in the world. And
Daniel's somebody that if there was going to be some apocalyptic,
oh my,
I'd want to hang out. I'd want to be with him.
Oh yeah.
I'd be eating mushrooms and knowing what they are out there, making sure I wasn't going to poison myself.
Without him, I'd be just shriveled up in the corner, underneath some bush dying. And here he is.
Thriving.
Yeah.
Starting fires and eating pine pollen and keeping everybody alive.
That sounds, I told you a while back, I read a lot of books by Tom Brown, and he wrote The Tracker and The Vision and books like that. And he was like a survivalist kind of a guy, and a really interesting guy. And it sounds like Daniel Vitalis is into this kind of stuff as well. And that'd be really interesting to work with him in that capacity, wouldn't it?
Well, it sounds like maybe what he was talking about at the end there about how he wants to go maybe with people that want to go deeper into these things. It sounded like maybe he was going to offer some sort of a retreat or program in which they could come, actually, it sounded like, hang out with him and basically learn those kinds of things. And
because I've heard his shows on other, or his work on other shows, and I know that he does a lot of training in wilderness survival. And then recently he told us he was doing, what was that, a emergency EMT course. And so he's kind of like rounding out all the edges to get his personal knowledge to a point where he can take on people in retreat kind of style formats.
That is amazing.
And
to have that available to the public, people who care. That is just...
Yeah. That would be cool.
That is amazing.
Yeah, that'd be really interesting. And I just wanted also something that came to mind that I didn't really want to say on the show. And I'm not going to make any claims here because that would be bad and we can't make any claims. But if you do have any skin issues, perhaps like a melanoma or something, you might want to look into a product called Cansema. And the website for that is, what is it? Something herbs or alt cancer. ALT cancer. And then it redirects you to something with the name herbs in it.
Okay.
And people can use that. That's like a black salve.
You'll put the link on it, right?
I'll put the link on this show page, which is 153.
Okay.
So people can use that if they've got a skin issue.
But we're not claiming it. We're just putting it out there.
It does nothing. It will do nothing for your
pointless.
Skin. Yeah, it absolutely will do nothing for your skin. So
there we go.
No claims at all. But man, so what did you think about his talking about? A couple things was really interesting. The washing your body and the washing off the oils that your body produces where the vitamin D is. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah, I guess I didn't think about the vitamin D itself being washed off. I've always thought about the oils being washed off isn't good, I wish I would have asked him about like your hair, because I know that if I don't wash my hair for like 4 days, I'm like, it's so oily and gross.
Super oily, yeah.
But I've also heard of people like our brother-in-law didn't wash his hair. Do you remember that for like months?
That's right.
He just washed it with water, and no kinds of shampoos or conditioners. So I'm not sure about how that all works. But as far as the body, that's interesting. You can actually wash off the vitamin D and negate the good positive effects that you're looking for. Yeah. That you were trying to get in the first place.
That's weird. I mean, I wonder, I guess you would just get some sort of organic soap like we have and, wash like you said, your crotch and your armpits and maybe your hair. But then, what is
your ear canal, like you said?
Yeah. And then what is the point of really lathering up your everywhere else? I mean, I guess it's because, like he said, you feel dirty if you've got oil on your skin.
Right. But when we start viewing it as it's not dirty, it makes us survive and thrive because oils are essential to your body looking younger, to aging better.
And preventing things like he talked about staph.
Right.
Because
it's a layer.
If you have the oils on your skin, it'll eat up the staph because it's acidic. And it reminds me of this thing I saw the other day about this Indian guy, and he hasn't taken a shower or hasn't washed himself I think it's for something like 50 some odd years. He's in his 70s or
I
something.
thought you were going to say days.
No, years.
Oh, man.
I had to take a shower for 50 years or something.
What?
I wish I still had that article up.
Like, not even gone, I mean, does that involve, like, not even going swimming, like immersing yourself in the water? Or does that mean, like, scrub it up, dub, like,
Well, no, I'm
scrubbing
sure.
yourself down?
I'm sure he's been in the water.
Okay.
But isn't that crazy?
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Huh?
And I forget, I think I read some of the comments people were saying, like, don't invite that guy to my house. And,
Oh, my gosh.
you know, this guy probably stinks. And
How funny.
But, I mean, not that we would ever do that, but it's just interesting what's
Not
possible.
that we'd ever have him to our house for dinner? Is that what you meant?
Oh,
Or not that
man.
we'd ever not go without a shower for 50.
Could you imagine we put him in our shower and just have him wash off? It would be like this
Be hazmat.
brown water coming off of the ground.
It'd be like what came out when we did our foot detox.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
Crazy.
Love it.
Wow. So hopefully you enjoyed that 4-part series we did with Mr. Daniel Vitalis. Really great guy. If you're interested in any of the products that he talks about ever, they're always linked up to on our site. He's got a lot of good flagship products that we've tried and used. It's like he's got the pine pollen. We've never tried the tincture form of pine pollen. I should try that.
Deer antler.
Colostrum. Amazing stuff.
Mushrooms.
Yeah, he's got a dual extract, reishi and chaga, that are just incredible, where he takes the mushroom and boils it and it removes all of the water-soluble triterpenes or whatever he calls them out of the mushrooms. And then he takes that mushroom and then tinctures it, and then different compounds come out of that, and then he combines the two together, and it's just amazing. So if you're interested...
is that all he does?
That's it, yeah. In fact, he was probably working on that little thing during the show. Yeah.
Sure, mindless.
Yeah.
So easy. A monkey could do
A
it.
caveman can do it.
A caveman could do it. A Geico caveman could do it.
So if you're interested in any of his products and buy those on a frequent basis, go through our link. That would help support us. And we just love supporting him and what he's doing. So if you want to do that, it's extremehealthradio.com/surthrival. SURTHRIVAL /surthrival. And that will just redirect you, and you can purchase any of those products, and we'll get a little commission that will help keep everything free as well. And I also want to let you guys know we have a project coming up that we're working on behind the scenes. We've mentioned it before, but this is something that's really near and dear to our hearts, and something where our vision is to help potentially hundreds of thousands of people with this condition. It's a project that we're working on behind the scenes, and like I said in previous shows, that it requires quite a bit of money to produce. So it's I hate asking for money, but it's just something that we really feel strongly about. So if you know of anyone who would like to invest in a project like that, that would help us get the ball moving, it costs about $10,000 to fund this whole thing. So
and we're going out on a limb right now with this whole Extreme Health Radio thing, just doing this as our full-time thing, and it's scary, but we just don't have the budget it's going to take to do our project. And so again, we don't like asking. Nobody likes asking for money.
Yeah, I feel weird, but
that we do need help, and your help, or anyone you know that would be interested in helping, would be greatly appreciated. Anything you guys can throw our way. We really are excited about it, and we have a fire burning under our buns, and we want to get going. We're just not sure. We believe it will come, but we're putting it out there and asking for help because...
Yeah, we just think it's important, because
I think it's hugely important.
There's so many people that are dealing with this particular issue, and I don't want to reveal it right now. As we move forward, of course, I'll talk more about specifically what it is, but I just feel really strongly that we can help so many people with this issue, and it's a huge issue in today's culture, more so than any other time. And so... yeah, it costs some money to start, and we are just looking for people to donate and to help us in that way. So if that's something that you feel like it's something that you want to do, feel free to contact us and support us in that way. Or if you know of anyone who is tuned on to natural health and alternative healing of diseases and things.
Or a rich uncle who happens to have 10 grand that doesn't know what to do with it.
Yeah, that too.
We'll take it. We'll get our ball rolling.
Yeah, that will help support this project, and we're really excited about it. So if that's something that you're interested in, please contact us or support us through PayPal. Anything you can would be really, really helpful because, like Kate said, this whole project, this whole show, we work for free. Everything is free, and I work about 10 hours a day. And,
more than that.
Yeah, more than that. And so it's something that we just feel like we just
Very
have
strongly.
to. This is our way of giving back to the world. So, if that's something you're interested in, that would be amazing.
God bless you guys, and thank you for listening and being part of our lives and making this possible.
We love it. We love it.
We love it.
And if you want to stay up to date with our shows and show schedule and guests and all that kind of good stuff, don't forget to follow us on Facebook. We'd love to have you join our community. It's growing every day, and it's a lot of fun to interact with all you guys on there. And don't forget to do that, as well as sign up to our newsletter series. You can keep up to date with further things that we have going on, upcoming projects. We'll probably be announcing that on there as well. So don't forget to do that. And most importantly, don't feel like obligated to do anything. We're just here to serve you. So
it'll all work out.
Yeah, just get healthy and get fit.
Get thriving.
Yeah, and get to living your passion and living your dreams. So that's what we're all about. So thanks for listening, everyone. And
love you guys.
We'll catch you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to this episode.
It's time to go for now, but our mission does not end with this show.
Justin and Kate will be back with another interview packed full of ideas, discoveries, and unique ways to regain your health.
Head on over to extremehealthradio.com/subscribe and instantly download our free gift too that contains cutting-edge strategies to start making healthy lifestyle changes today.
No material on this blog is intended to suggest that you should not seek professional medical care. Always work with qualified medical professionals, even as you educate yourself in the field of live food nutrition and alternative medicine. I'm not a doctor, nor am I offering readers or listeners medical advice of any kind. None of the information offered here should be interpreted as a diagnosis of any disease, nor an attempt to treat or prevent any disease or condition. While information in this blog and during this podcast is discussed in the context of numerous conditions, it can be dangerous to take action based on any of the information